This is an example of one of the training videos in our FileMaker Certification Preparation course at productivecomputinguniversity.com. This lesson continues the field validation options and some questions on the study guide. There is actually a question in the official study guide that says, what methods of setting a field with data are not considered data entry for purpose of field level validation? So let's test that in our solution. We'll look at our text 2 and we'll make it strict data type of a number. We'll still say only during data entry, and we'll have a custom message of numbers only. We'll just make it fun and have it be that. So we've entered information singly here by just putting in a letter, and that doesn't work. But what is a way we can enter information without it being data entry? Well, one way is to do the replace field contents or command equals. So if we decide to replace everything, calculate a result, remember it was supposed to be numbers only, so we'll just replace it with PCU all the way through it, and we get no errors, even though text 2 is still number only. So replacing field contents does not trigger the field validation. Another way is to actually import records. So if we choose a file, any file, and we'll do text 2, and we need it to be a number or it will not work. So let's just do the created by for now. So we'll put all of those out. We're only going to do that. We're going to update existing records in the found set, which is all of them. And we click import. You have that option, and we import them. And it does give us a warning that there's more records in the data source, but there were no errors for validation. So that is actually really cool. There's also another way, and we'll go back to the form view for this, and that is to use a script. So I have a script set up, and we'll just take a look at a couple of those. I have a simple script, set field to PCU, text 2 to PCU. So if we run that script, it sets it, and we're committing, and there's no error. So those are the 3 options where it won't trigger it unless you choose a different validation setting of always instead of only during data entry. So if we just change that, and then we go in here and do command equals to replace everything with PCU, we have errors because it has a kind of a generic error, but it's validating it incorrectly. It's saying you can't do that with replace field contents. So let's try the import also and see if that will trigger the error. We still have the same settings here, so we'll try and import text into there, and we have the general one, but now we have errors. So it skipped that because of all the errors. And the same thing is going to go for the script. So now we'll run the script, and we didn't get an error that time. So let's just change to a different record and run the script. It's not setting it to PCU, but we're not seeing the error either. So let's just run this script through the debugger and see what happens. And here is the error. It's giving an error, but we're not getting that message. So very interesting how some of this works. And in your study guide, when we take a look at that answer for number 4, it gives us replace field contents, import records, and setting a field during a script. So for test-taking purposes, I would remember it this way. However, it was very difficult finding something in the help file, but I found a bit of an exception. If we change this to be unique value, and we say only during data entry, this should be okay. And if we look at our full table view here, we'll go here and we'll run this script to set it to PCU. And when we try to commit it, it says unique values only. But we're using a script, and this should not be throwing an error according to their study guide. What happens if we just do the replace field contents with that particular validation setting, and that doesn't have a problem? Or importing with that validation setting, we'll do everything the same again and import, and there's no errors, so it imports all of that. But if we try and do the script version, there's the first one, which is okay, but if we try and set another one, now we get an error. So this exception also happens with the existing value, if it has to be an existing value. So we'll go in here and we'll try and set this to PCU. And when we commit, oh, that is an existing value. So let's change all of these back to admin. And now we'll run the script and we get our error. That has to be an existing value. But if we use we'll do the replace field contents first, and we'll replace it with, actually we'll do a serial number because none of those would be existing values. We don't get an error when we commit. And the last exception seems to be validate by calculation. We'll take off existing value. So all of these need to be within 1 through 5 or we get the error. But let's run the script and that gives an error. Well, let's do replace field contents with 15, which would be outside the range, and no errors there. And if we do an import, there's no errors in the import either. So in those 3 instances, unique, existing, and validate by calculation, the script still triggers it and is considered data entry. But for the test purposes, because in their study guide they have these as the answers, this is what you should know. And if you happen to find something in the help file somewhere with these answers, because I couldn't even find those, I just went by testing it, then please let us know in the discussion area. I hope you enjoyed this sample from our FileMaker Certification Preparation course. Visit productivecomputinguniversity.com for more information about the certification preparation course and other training to help you save time as a FileMaker developer.